No public out there.
Just to let you know, Chair, we have gone live on YouTube. Thanks.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Rushcliffe Borough Council Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Roger Upton, the new chairman of this committee, and with us this evening is Councillor Maureen Stockwood, the vice chairman, sitting immediately in front of me, and councillors Clark, Gowland, Gray, Healy, Major, Mason, Purdue-Horam, John Stockwood and Thomas. And also present from the officers are Leanne Ashmore, the Director of Development and Economic Growth, Andrew Pegram to my right, the Service Manager for Planning, Rebecca Sells, Principal Solicitor, Tracy Coop, Democratic Service Officer, Laura Webb sitting next to her, Democratic Service Officer, and to my extreme right, Planning Officers Paul Taylor and Matt Hilton. If I may, just some basic housekeeping issues. No fire alarm is expected this evening, but if it does sound, please follow the exit signs to the assembly point at the rear of the car park, or probably follow one of us that know the way. If you could turn off your mobile phones to silent, that would be appreciated. It could be a long meeting. There are public toilets in the main entrance foyer. If necessary, please feel free to use them. But depending on how the agenda progresses, I think we probably will have a comfort break around 8:30 to 9. It just depends how the timing goes this evening. Finally, for members and others, if you could switch off your microphones when you're not actually speaking, that would help the process. So turning to the agenda, which I presume you've all had, the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence and substitute members. Could I ask for those apologies and substitutes, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have apologies from Councillor Bailey and we have Councillor John Stockwood as a substitute this evening.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda is declaration of interest. Now, we have two applications this evening for which we are consultees, where the Borough Council is a consultee for a County Council application. Now, County Council members and ward members of this committee need not step down from the committee, but they should declare their interest if they are a county councillor or a ward councillor for these applications, and confirm that they will consider the application with an open mind and on the debate as it unfolds, and not with any predetermined view. Are there any declarations from county councillors? I will start the ball rolling, if you like, as Councillor Roger Upton. I am a county councillor and a borough councillor, so I make that declaration. It's non-pecuniary. Anybody, other county councillors would make that, or ward councillors? I can see Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Similarly, I'm also a county councillor as well.
Councillor Gowland. Thank you. Councillor Purdue-Horam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I declare a non-pecuniary interest as a county councillor, but I will adhere to the criteria that you set out.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas. I just saw two hands there, Councillor Thomas and Councillor John Stockwood.
Other button, sorry. I'm the ward member for Eastleigh, so I declare a non-pecuniary interest in the school in Eastleigh.
Thank you. And Councillor John Stockwood.
I'm a ward councillor for Bingham West, so I declare a non-pecuniary interest in the Bingham West school application. Thank you.
Councillor Purdue-Horam.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm the borough ward member for Bingham West, so I declare a non-pecuniary interest on that basis as well.
Thank you. I just declare that I'm a county councillor and a borough councillor, but I'm not involved with any applications in my ward. Thank you. Right, so that's got the declarations of interest over, I think, both on the code of conduct or the planning code. So it takes us to item 3 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 13th of May 2021. Our members of the committee agreed that these minutes are correct and would like to approve them. Proposed by Councillor Maureen Stockwood, seconded by Councillor Debbie Mason. Thank you. So we can now move on to item 4 of the agenda, which is to discuss this evening's planning applications. But firstly, if I could just say that we will conduct this meeting on the broadly ways that it's been conducted on the custom and practice up to now, because the pilot for the new committee won't be starting until August. So it's current custom and practice, although I may make a few minor changes as a new chairman. I would like to remind the appropriate members and officers, if I may, that I assume you've read the reports in detail and ask that you don't repeat the same points if they've already been relevant. I've heard it said recently that you really don't want to boil your cabbage twice, but there we are. Repetition can take up a lot of time. So if you could keep your comments concise and relevant, as we've got quite a lot of applications to do this evening and time is a consideration. Finally, I'd just like to remind everybody that this is a quasi-judicial meeting that should be conducted with the appropriate professionalism and behaviour and good manners, and that's what I'm looking for. And really only material planning issues should be debated this evening on these items. So without more ado, thank you for that. And I think we now note the report of the Director of Growth and Economic Development, which gives an overview of the planning process and the applications to be considered this evening. So the first application is application 20//00810/full, Overgrown Acres, Cockgrave Road, Normanton on the Wolds, Nottinghamshire. A seasonal change of use, erection of 3 teepees, each 10.3 metres diameter, to be used from the 1st of May to the 30th of September annually, to allow for 28 events to be held, part use of existing dwelling as bridal suite, limited to bridal suite use during the 28 events only. So without more ado, I think, if I may, I'd like to pass over to Mr. Pegram, who will take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, just a further update. There was some late representations circulated yesterday afternoon for members. There's been a further development that occurred yesterday afternoon. We received from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government notification that they'd received written request for this application to be called in. The process that they would follow is that they will not intervene unless the Borough Council resolve to grant planning permission. If we are minded to refuse, we can then issue a permission. If we are minded to grant permission, we will have to inform the HCLG and give them opportunity to consider whether to call the application in. If they don't call the application in, they would then notify us and we would be at liberty to issue the decision. Chairman, on that basis, I need to make a change to the recommendation, and the recommendation should now read as follows. It is recommended that, subject to the application not being called in for determination by the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, the Director for Development and Economic Growth be authorised to grant planning permission subject to the following conditions. Chairman, the conditions, just for clarity, are those which are set out in the report, along with those which were amended in the late representations, although you will see that on condition 1, members will be required to give consideration to the length of the temporary permission that might be granted in the event that it is resolved to grant planning permission. Chairman, just also for background, to draw members' attention to page 13 of the report, The background sets out the history of this application. Members may recall that this application was considered at the meeting in October 2020. Following that meeting, we did issue the planning permission. Following the issue of that planning permission, we received a challenge to the application, and that was considered carefully in light of the issues raised, and ultimately an order was granted quashing the decision. So effectively that makes the application live again, and the application is back before committee for reconsideration. Chairman, I'll now go into the presentation, and for the benefit of the people who may be watching on YouTube, I will share the screen, so bear with me just 1 second. So yes, they should now be able to see that. So, Chairman, the application, as you mentioned, relates to overgrown acres in Normanton-on-the-Wolds. This is the site in question, if I can find my cursor. It's the area outlined in red. So it's on Cotgrave Road, adjacent the junction with Cotgrave Lane. The site is largely of agricultural use, and over to the northeastern boundary is a dwelling which is a barn conversion. It has a main living accommodation with an annex in the northwestern part of the building. That's the aerial photograph, just to confirm again what you've seen in the plan. That's the site, Cotgrave Road and Cotgrave Lane. And this is a site plan. I'll come back to this in a moment because it is repeated on the presentation. Just to take you through some photographs of the site, Chairman. This is the site. This is looking along Cotgrave Road in a generally easterly direction. So the site is effectively behind these trees. These trees are a landscape buffer within the site. That's now looking back westerly, and at this point you can see the access to the site and the junction with Cotgrave Lane. This is the access into the site, Chairman. And then in the site looking back, that's now looking out of the access onto Cotgrave Road. Turning around again and looking back down the driveway, the driveway sweeps round and then bears to the right, and the dwelling is situated behind these trees. The field where the events are proposed to take place is located to the right of this picture, behind these trees. Turning slightly to the right again, that is the temporary access, or the access into the proposed parking area, which I will show on the plan. I'll pick up again in detail in a minute. And then that's looking generally southerly towards the site where the teepees would be located, behind this fence. Again, just looking along the driveway and going around the corner, and now we see the dwelling, which I say was a conversion of an agricultural building. And that is this portion of the dwelling is the annex, which is the part to be used as part of the proposal for a bridal suite. If we now go into the field where the events would take place, this is the area of the teepees. You can see the bases remain on site in situ. This is a 1.9 metre fence which has been erected along the back of that area. Now looking again in a generally westerly direction across that decking area to the fence line, and beyond that would be the car parking area. Turning around again, looking in a more southerly direction across the decking that the teepees would sit on. And then turning around back, looking easterly towards the dwelling. This one is taken roughly on the fence line between the area where the teepees would be located and the temporary car park would be located. So if we turn round, so this is the fence line that picture was taken from. The road, Cotgrave Road, is beyond these trees. And this is the area that would be used as a temporary car park. And looking from this side, you can now see where that access would come through that you saw from the other side. Just turning around now, looking more in a westerly direction. and then in a more southerly direction down across the field. We now turn back and look at the area where the events would take place, and also the dwelling in the background. Again, that's looking across the area where the proposed car park would be to the trees. And then if we go over to the western boundary, this is the area of buffer landscaping. And then if we jump across the other side of that, that is effectively the extent of the western boundary. And you can then see the properties which front Cotgrave Road in the distance. That's looking from that same position, but in a more southerly direction. So these are the teepees that would be erected for the events. Just to give you, these are just obviously pictures showing previous events that have taken place at the site. And then again, just showing you those teepees within the wider field. This picture is taken in September 2020 from a footpath generally to the east of the site, looking down across the fields, and you can see in that picture that's the location of the teepees with the dwelling and neighbouring buildings in this area here. There are some buildings in the neighbouring sites, which I think that are those ones sit adjacent to the dwelling. And then that's a picture again taken from a similar position in May 2021. So again, teepees would be in that general location, but clearly in this picture they've been taken down. So Chairman, the application is, as you read out, for seasonal use of the site for events between the 1st of May and the 30th of September, and also part use of the dwelling for a bridal suite. The structures on site, as we've mentioned already, the teepees, there would also be a catering tent located adjacent to the teepees associated with that use. And again, that just shows you general layout of the site. And this one in a bit more detail, where it shows the car parking, the teepees in this location, the dwelling over here. Ignore the reference to camping, Chairman. There is a condition in the report which actually says no camping shall take place on site. So Chairman, this is a very complex application. I need to remind members of some of the fundamental planning considerations that need to be taken into account when considering this application. Clearly, there are the usual planning development management issues that crop up with any application, impact on highway safety, impact on neighbours through noise and disturbance, etc., impact on landscape and amenity. The fundamental policy position, Chairman, is that of Greenbelt. And just to take you through the tests that need to be applied when you consider this application. Firstly, Chairman, we can't underestimate the importance of the Greenbelt. Inappropriate development is by definition harmful and must be given substantial weight in the consideration of this application. Paragraphs in the NPPF do set out types of development that will be regarded as not inappropriate. This application does not fall with any of the categories of development that will be regarded as not inappropriate. Therefore, Chairman, just to repeat, we are dealing with an application for inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Inappropriate development, just to repeat, is harmful by definition, and that harm must be given substantial weight. The fact that the site has temporary impacts has no bearing on the harm by definition. That is, as I say, harmful by definition, regardless of the nature of development that's taking place, and must be given substantial weight. In considering this application, Chairman, you can give regard to other considerations, and if decision makers believe that those other considerations clearly outweigh the harm arising by definition and by harm through impact on the openness of the development, and any other harms arising from the development, so that includes impact on highway safety, impact on amenities of neighbours, impact on amenities, all those harms have to be given substantial weight. If those harms are outweighed by, if you consider those harms to be outweighed by other considerations, then very special circumstances will exist. And those, as I say, those other considerations must clearly outweigh the harm to the greenbelt. Just to repeat, both by definition, by reason of impact on the openness of the greenbelt, and through any other harm that arises. Those are the tests you apply, Chairman. It's effectively a three-stage process, and you must go through those in your mind. And clearly, we would need members to clearly demonstrate that those factors have been taken into account in reaching a decision on this application. Chairman, clearly your officers have already in their own minds applied those tests. We've looked at the application extremely carefully. We have come to the conclusion on balance, Chairman, that there are other considerations in this instance which clearly outweigh the harm to the greenbelt and any other harm arising from this development. And therefore, we have originally presented the application with a favourable recommendation. But as I said at the beginning, because of the intervention by HCLG, clearly we would need to notify them of any potential resolution to grant permission before we would be in a position to issue the permission. Chairman, on that point, I think I'll give my voice to rest and hand over to you and the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram, for that very comprehensive and detailed presentation. It takes us, I believe, now to the speakers for this application, of which I am informed we have 3. Now, the speakers, when you come up to the table in front of you, you have up to 5 minutes to speak. And when you're ready to start, please press the microphone button, which will illuminate a red light. And we will then start timing you, and you'll be told by officers when you have 30 seconds left, but it is a maximum of 5 minutes. So if speaker number 1, who I believe is Lizzie Marjoram, the applicant's agent, would like to take the chair, as they say, and when you feel comfortable, just indicate to me and we'll let you press the button and start the timing in your own time. So, okay to go?
My name is Lizzie Marjoram. I'm a specialist planning law solicitor instructed by the applicant, Michelle Woodward. The applicant is nervous about this meeting. Her business plans have been in limbo for 6 months for 2 reasons. Firstly, because of the pandemic, and secondly, because an objection group made a High Court claim for judicial review against the council. This application was first approved by the council in October 2020. The objection group's claim said that the council made a technical mistake. The council agreed, and therefore the court has ordered this application has to be decided again. That claim was an expensive exercise for the council. It had to pay the objectors' costs of £8,554. The council also had to pay its own costs. Miss Woodward, the applicant, even though she was not at any fault, has borne her own costs for legal advice and has willingly participated to have this matter decided again today. Miss Woodward supports the council's previous decision and asks for the same decision to be made again tonight. It is very important that nobody misleads you about the legal process. The council is allowed to make the same decision again, provided the correct tests are set out in your report and your reasoning is clear as explained by Mr. Pegram. I will explain to you why you should stand by your original decision. The application site is in Greenbelt. Inappropriate development in the Greenbelt is harmful by definition and by encroaching on openness. Substantial weight must be given to that harm. That harm can be clearly outweighed by very special circumstances. I asked my client whether anything has changed since the application was approved by you last time. Her answer was that the economic case for this development has intensified. The crippling effects of the pandemic on many rural businesses have been especially acute in the hospitality industry. You were previously persuaded by these economic benefits, and they are now even more compelling for all those businesses connected to this proposal. The economic benefits of this proposal for the rural economy do qualify as very special circumstances. Rural businesses are often small and they are not faceless. The applicant provides employment for an event planner, gardener, decor, bar staff, ground staff, cleaners and security. The applicant's business is connected to florists, caterers, bakeries, handymen, taxi companies, B&Bs, campsites, pubs, web designers, social media agents, print shops, DJs, wedding dress shops, photographers and videographers, all relying on these bookings going ahead. Please note that there are over 60 letters of support from these individuals. That is so rare to have that level of support. Please have each of these real people, each of these small businesses in mind when you make your decision tonight. I believe you did have this in mind when you reached your decision last time, and that you made the right decision. These are all SME businesses, many of which did not qualify for any COVID grant relief, and yet the rural economy is worth billions to the UK economy. We must assist its recovery. For the customers of this venue too, the emotional strain of this period has been very high. 10 weddings have been cancelled or postponed during this time, lives on hold. This application is capable of providing community benefit. The events planned for this summer include community and charity events, not for profit and heavily subsidised by the applicant on the limited number of event days which she has. There will be one community event per month from May to September. These events provide recreational therapy for those bereaved through suicide or COVID, frontline NHS staff and volunteers at women's crisis centres. Another event is planned as a thank you to the QMC A&E department for their service to the community in the last 12 months. It is entirely unclear to me why the objection comments which I have seen would attack the worthiness of these events. I would like to ask for consistency in decision making. This proposal is not unique. There are other similar businesses locally within the Greenbelt. Some of them operate without any planning permission and consequently very little enforcement control. It is important to emphasise here that in asking for planning permission, my client is very responsibly offering significant control over these events to the council. You will note the very significant controls over access, timings and noise, which would not be afforded to the council if events took place on the site using permitted development rights. Objectors have lobbied the government to call in this application. I think you should be allowed to make a local decision on this local issue, and I hope you agree. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Well within time. Our next speaker is, are we just going to clean the table? I have to remember these COVID precautions, so easy to forget. Thank you. So our next speaker is Sonia Fennell, and she is an objector to the proposal. Sonia, it's the same procedure. You've got up to 5 minutes. We'll let you know 30 seconds towards the end. When you feel ready, no rush. When you feel ready, just indicate, press the button, and we'll start the clock when the red light appears.
If you could display the table, thank you. It won't have escaped your notice that most of the supportive comments raise no material planning issues and so can have no weight. Insofar as consistency has been raised, the correct comparison is with previous refusals of development on this same site. The main issue here is, do very special circumstances exist to justify inappropriate development in the Greenbelt? So that should be the focus of your deliberations and decision. This updated report is not a genuine reappraisal of the application merits and includes several grounds for a second legal challenge. The conclusions remain seriously tainted by other legal and policy mistakes found in earlier versions. While it may not be necessary or usual to separately list and weigh the material considerations, other LPAs do it to aid their decisions, and it isn't wrong to use a table like the one shown. The table at the very least illustrates the long list of harms and very short list of benefits. Major mistakes in the report include, firstly, treating definitional harm to the Greenbelt, this is in the report, not as Mr. Pegram said earlier, as if it's tempered by the size or impermanence or screening of the development. That mistake affects the whole of report and especially the weighting exercise. Secondly, treating the NPPF requirement to give significant weight to economic benefits as the same thing as substantial weight to be attached to greenbelt harms. Significant just means important enough to be given a weight without instructing how much. Substantial, however, is an instruction on how much weight you must give to greenbelt harms. And thirdly, citing the presumption in favour of sustainable development, when in fact the relevant NPPF presumption is here as against development. To weigh if VSC exists, you must only count benefits which flow directly from material considerations relating to this application. So here, that's just the extra benefits which arise directly from the owners being able to hold about 18 more events than under permitted development. The word directly here also means that you mustn't count certain types of spend by the owner, like spend on the house conversion, on the small holding and on setting up the pre-existing business. Also, spend by clients directly with suppliers like Grace Days doesn't count, as it's money the clients would spend on their wedding, whether or not it's held at Overgrown Acres. The purported health benefits don't count either, as they are too fanciful and remote to be material considerations. Please show the photos. The exercise boils down to weighing very minimal direct employment and minimal direct economic benefits against a development the size of 3 two-bedroom bungalows like this one in open greenbelt for 5 months of the year, and the urbanising activity of parked cars, amplified music, dancing and general hubbub every weekend through the summer. Plus spaces covering an area of 250 square metres, almost as big as 2 tennis courts, through the winter. I say minimal benefits because I estimate the net direct jobs gain to be about 1 FTE, based on 2/3 of a full-time gardener, plus 72 extra bar shifts. And using OA price lists, I estimate the maximum turnover from 18 additional weddings to be about 180k, out of which the owners must pay themselves and their direct staff. Financial and employment benefits for the owners themselves don't count as material benefits. So, do you truly think that when the government wrote the VSC test into the NPPF, they intended that a gain of a single job and such a small amount of direct cash flow into the local economy could rationally be given anywhere near enough weight to clearly outweigh the harms arising here to the greenbelt from inappropriateness, from loss of openness, from conflict with purposes, plus all the other harms identified? I don't, and neither would any rational person. You would be fully justified in concluding that very special circumstances do not exist to clearly outweigh the greenbelt and other harms from this development, and so refuse permission. I urge you to reject the officer advice and to refuse permission, which after all is your statutory duty relating to proposals which do not accord with a local development plan. Any other course would quite obviously be perverse, irrational and unreasonable and unlikely to withstand further legal challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I say, within time, thank you. We'll do the COVID clean again, and then we'll have our third and final speaker. Right, our third and final speaker on this application is Councillor Mason, a ward councillor for this ward. Councillor Mason, I take it you understand the procedures, so when you're ready, you can press the button, as they say.
Right, thank you, Councillor Upton. Well, this has been going on for some time now. So I have given up quite a bit of time simply just reading a lot of it, but I have also passed it nearly every day, both summer and winter. And having looked at everything yet again, I have to say the previous speakers spoke very well. But I still feel that those three on page 14, A, B and C, paragraph 4, are the real things that we should be talking about, and that is impact on the Greenbelt and against Greenbelt policies, amenity areas, but also the residential amenities in terms of noise and disturbance, and particularly on the traffic. I do question on page 19 that the events will occur at off-peak times. I'm not too sure when the off-peak times are, because they can occur at any time, as the on-peak times can. I can come along Cotgrave Road, and as I say, I do every day. And that particular T-junction that you will be able to see on one of the photographs is particularly dangerous. I too have seen cars queuing up to get in on the site. There is not enough access with the from the road to the gates, and they have been queuing. I have come over the road and down. Okay, yes, I will be turning right, but if I wasn't and hadn't slowed down, I would be slap bang up to cars. I said this last time, but it didn't seem to make much difference. When I think about these 28 weeks in the spring and the summer, it's as if, well, it's okay. This only happens in the summer. Yes, it does. But that's the time when people want to be out in their gardens. They want to have their windows open, and they want to have a free and easy life. That may not happen. In fact, I can count the times that I have seen vehicles trying to get in. So it may not be so harmful to the Greenbelt in some ways, but I believe that it is harmful to the Greenbelt. We have a Greenbelt policy, and I take the first speaker was saying about business, and yes, I do sympathise, and I have met the owner, but it was started and it was thought about knowing that it was in the Greenbelt, knowing that that road and what it was like. Yes, you can stand there and see no traffic at certain times, but there are times when there is an awful lot of traffic, when everybody's hoping to get home to Cotgrave or Radcliffe through that rat run. Then I have to say that special circumstances, for me, do not exist. There may be some, but as Mr. Pegram has said, it is on balance. And everyone here has to think what their balance is, not necessarily just on what the officers say. And usually I do agree with the officers, because they're the professionals, I'm not. But I have to say that this time, I don't feel that special circumstances exist. One that has been quoted is about the future, businesses and jobs. Yes, they're important, but are we really saying that we can build any business anywhere that has the amount of traffic, let alone on these 5-6 months, 28 events, anywhere on the Greenbelt? And it definitely is the Greenbelt. It is not even part of Tollerton. It sits on its own. And therefore, I'm very sorry that it's a business and that I would like it to be workable. But I think this is a step too far, and it's a step into the Greenbelt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. That concludes our three speakers. I'll ask Mr. Pegram, is there anything you want to respond to the points made by the speakers at all at this point?
Thank you, Chairman. Only briefly, I don't want to misquote anyone. Be careful, I don't, Chairman. I think there was a suggestion that benefit to other economic benefits and business is not material in this case. Chairman, all I would suggest is that there is a whole section in the NPPF about building a strong and competitive economy. I'll leave members to determine if they believe that job creation and benefits to other businesses in the area are material planning considerations. Just looking through, Chairman, I know that Councillor Mason expressed concern about traffic and transport issues, and those were echoed in a lot of the comments that we received about the application. However, Chairman, you will see that in the consultation section of the report, this has been considered by the Highway Authority, and the Highway Authority do not object to this application, subject to certain conditions. And I think I'll leave it there, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. So, members of the committee, we're ready to move on, I think, now to discuss the application and have a debate and make a decision. So, who would like to start the debate? Come on, there must be somebody willing to start the ball rolling. Councillor Clark, thank you.
I don't know, I'm always the one who gives in first. Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me, I've just got it. Can I just get some clarification, first of all, from Mr. Pegram as to, is there any difference here? I can't see any difference. Is there any difference factually in planning terms to what is here before us today that we considered last year?
Mr. Pegram.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, there is a minor change to the description of development because the original description did include the erection of a pagoda for use in connection with weddings. The applicant has effectively repurposed an existing structure on the site and therefore no longer requires a pagoda. So that element of the scheme has been removed. In terms of any other change, my own belief, Chairman, is that you are considering today the same, with the exception of that element, you're considering the same application today as you did in October. Having said that, there have been a number of additional comments which have come in from residents. There is also, in response to those comments, although, Chairman, we have not included them significantly in the report, the applicants made submissions online in response to the comments made by third parties. That did provide some areas of clarification, if you like. But otherwise, no, this is the same application you considered in October, Chairman. Clearly, the challenge was on the basis that we had not properly applied Greenbelt policy. The report did refer to Greenbelt policy, but clearly not well enough. So we have revisited the report. The report has been rewritten to seek to address those concerns. But otherwise, Chairman, in answer to Councillor Clark's question, fundamentally, you are considering the same proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I need to just ask Mr. Pegram a few more questions before I make some comments in relation to the conditions that are shown. Page 42 and page 43, the very first condition, it says that the permission will expire on the 30th of September 2021, which is only whatever it is, 4 months away or whatever. And then it goes on to say, unless a further planning permission has been granted. So therefore, this application is for permission for the next 4 months. The future or further conditions then refer to it being that the CP shall only be erected between May and September annually, whereas the first condition had said that the permission expires in September 2021. So before I make any further comments, can I just have some clarification on that? Oh, sorry, I've got one other question which Mr. Pegram might like to include. In condition 4, it says within 1 month of the date of the permission, a final version of the noise management plan should be submitted to the Borough Council. Well, it just says it should be submitted. What if it's not acceptable? Or can any old plan be submitted? And does that comply with the condition? Does it have to be acceptable?
Thank you, Councillor Clark. While Mr. Pegram's gathering his thoughts, I think there's the two issues there, isn't there, on the conditions you've raised about the dates, the expiry date, September 2021, which isn't that far away, and condition 4, the noise management plan. Are you okay with?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, in response to the first query about the temporary permission, if I can draw members' attention to the late representations, because this is an issue that the applicant has raised with us. Clearly, just to explain the situation in terms of planning and how temporary permissions of this nature work. Clearly, the application was originally submitted with a noise assessment. That noise assessment, some of the findings were based on assumptions. My understanding, Chairman, and again, I'll qualify this by saying I'm not an environmental health officer or a noise expert, but my understanding of the situation from dealing with similar types of applications is that most measures for noise, mechanical, are based on mechanical noise, so noise from equipment and plant. Noise from people singing, dancing, having fun is not something which is easily measured in terms of noise or predicted in terms of noise levels. So when we get an application like this, Chairman, the option we have is to give permission for a temporary period to monitor the activity and determine whether or not it does, or whether the assumptions in the noise assessment are correct, and whether in fact it would cause harm to neighbouring properties or would not cause harm based on the findings or the predictions in that noise assessment. Generally, the legislation would say that we should only give one temporary permission to monitor the activity, and then afterwards, if the applicant comes back, we consider any information collected during that temporary period, and consideration can then be given to whether that use can be given a permanent permission. Clearly, we originally granted permission for this back in October, Chairman, when the applicant would have had time to submit the information to us and discharge all the conditions ready for the 2021 season. As is set out in the late representations, Chairman, the issue has been made more challenging by the legal challenge, but also through the COVID restrictions that have applied that would make it difficult to hold certain events to ensure that they could submit the information required by those conditions. So, Chairman, this is where, to a certain extent, I've given the committee, if members are minded to grant planning permission, I've given members of the committee an option of 3 options. One would be to stick with the current situation and only grant consent until the 30th of September. That may leave us in a position, Chairman, where we may be faced with considering a further temporary permission. We could grant permission for 12 months, which would expire 30th of June next year, but that would clearly be in the middle of a season and raises challenges for the applicant to a certain extent. And the third option, Chairman, would be to grant permission through till 30th of September 2022. But then clearly there is an issue that any adverse impacts that may arise would be experienced by the residents over that extended period. So that's hopefully deals with the question about condition 1. In terms of condition 4, Chairman, just to read on in that condition, yes, the first sentence requires a final version of the management plan to be submitted. But it then goes on to say no event shall take place until such time that the management plan has been approved in writing by the Borough Council. The management plan shall include details of noise monitoring to be undertaken required by condition 12, which would be sought for a minimum of the first 3 wedding events, etc., etc. So there is in there, Chairman, a trigger, which it's not just a case of submitting the plan. The applicant did submit a noise management plan following the previous grant of permission, but clearly as the permission was quashed, that brings into question the validity of that application to discharge conditions, and that may need to be resubmitted if permission is to be granted again. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. Does that help, Councillor Clark?
Well, nearly, but he hasn't. I don't think Mr. Pegram's actually quite answered the condition 2, where it just talks about it being annually. But let's move on. I do fully remember this debate last year, and I was debating with myself as to, because I voted, I spoke against it, the proposal, and I voted against it, and I've been trying to debate with myself as to whether I'd actually proposed refusal, and I remember that we had a debate, and during the debate Mr. Pegram actually referred to my proposal in terms of demonstrating that it outweighed the potential harm. Because originally I don't think I'd said outweighed. Anyway, my points in relation to this are that certainly, in my view, I don't think the special circumstances do outweigh the potential harm to the Greenbelt. I appreciate all the comments that have been made about the economy, which are perfectly valid, but the applicant's agent didn't actually give any actual planning considerations in terms of the actual site itself. It all related to the economy. And I remember last year expressing real concern about the noise and nuisance to the neighbouring residents, being detrimental to the amenities of those neighbouring residents. I also did express considerable concern, which was negated, if you like, by the highway consultation, which I disagree with. But I expressed considerable concern that the potential queuing on the main Cotgrave Road of vehicles waiting to turn into this event site, by virtue of the fact that, first of all, the gate might be closed, which was admitted last year. It will be closed on a regular basis. And secondly, that even if the gates open, most of that track is single track and therefore is not two-way. And therefore, there is bound to be a potential conflict of traffic, which again, to me, would leave the potential for queuing onto Cotgrave Road, which can only be detrimental, in my view, not to the Highway Authority's view, but in my view, to the safety of road users. So I think my main concern relates to the fact that the special circumstances do not outweigh the potential harm to the Greenbelt by virtue of that noise and nuisance to the neighbouring residents, which I've already referred to. I mean, in order to test the water, I'll make a proposal if you wish, Chairman.
I can't see any other hands at all.
Oh, I'm still going to make a
You're gonna make
proposal
a
anyway.
proposal.
So I'm going to propose that permission is refused on the basis that special circumstances have not been sufficiently demonstrated that would outweigh the potential harm to the Greenbelt, and that there would be detrimental noise and nuisance affecting the amenities of neighbouring residents. I'm going to leave it, whilst I'm quite serious about the traffic implications. I know that we'd immediately get advice that the Highway Authority said there isn't a problem, when in my mind I'm sure there will be, so I will leave out a traffic safety issue as a reason for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I think, have you got a seconder here, or do we ask for other comments? Councillor Thomas.
I'd like to second and make comments. There's 3 issues here. One is the access.
I think you need to do your microphone. You need to use your card, I think.
I am going now. Okay, so there are 3 issues. One is the access. And while I understand the concerns of the residents and Councillor Mason. I do take the point that highways have not objected. I think if we approve this tonight, I think there should be an additional condition about there being room to pull in off the road if the gates are shut, and also conditions about marshalling and the gates being open when events are on. The second consideration is the noise. And I felt at the last time we discussed it, that was the main thing we were discussing. And I was personally very swayed by the fact that it was a temporary approval to give a chance to monitor the noise impacts. But I've realised that the temporary approval doesn't actually have any sway at all on the issue of monitoring the harm to the greenbelt and whether or not there are very special circumstances. It's not been provided for that purpose. I think we should be consistent as far as noise is concerned. There's another wedding venue. Sorry, did you want me to stop for one? Okay. There's another wedding venue that we've considered, and I know that on that occasion, they have had to soundproof a barn in order to obtain planning permission to go forward at considerable cost. And that is a venue where there are a lot fewer houses close by, a lot fewer noise receptors. So I don't think we're being very consistent here. These are tents with open fronts and outdoor seating. But the last time we considered it, I was swayed by the fact that it was temporary as far as the noise was concerned, and that would be a chance to monitor it and for residents to be able to describe the impact it was having. As far as the greenbelt is concerned, we have basically been advised to give this more consideration. And as I said, the temporary nature of the proposed approval doesn't help with this. It's been said that it's only for part of the year and it can be restored, but 5/12 of the harm is still harm, and I don't think anybody is disputing that it's an inappropriate development in the greenbelt and that there is harm to the greenbelt. But this application is part of a series of applications, and I know we're not considering the others, but what it's mounting to is change of use of this agricultural field into a wedding venue, a business use. Diversification of agricultural land is something that's referred to in the MPPF and in our own policies, but this is it's not the same as a farm, for instance, that needs a few more strings to its bow in order to maintain its viability. This is a whole business, a whole new business being put on this very small piece of agricultural land. So in my mind, that is different. And the fact that it is screened and can't be seen from the road, if that was a reason not to allow a development in the greenbelt, then you could screen around any field and put anything on it. So I don't take a lot of weight by that. So the issue really is the very special circumstances that are needed to outweigh the harm. I don't think anybody is disputing that there is harm to the greenbelt as by definition, and because of the openness. And as far as the employment and the economic benefits are concerned, I'm swayed by the argument that there is a finite number of people who want to get married, and they're going to get married somewhere. And so those elements of supply and trade are going to happen, whether the wedding takes place on this wedding venue or another wedding venue. So I don't think there are a substantial number of permanent jobs. And I don't think it's that sort of rural diversification that integrates into the green belt. So on that basis, I'm seconding Councillor Clark's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. You made quite a few points there, but I think Mr. Pegram would like to respond to some of them, if not all.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to pick up on this issue of highway safety, I know it doesn't feature as one of Councillor Clark's reasons for refusal as the mover of the refusal. Just I seem to recall myself as well, amazingly, that the issue of setting back the gates was raised at the last meeting. And my advice to members and my response on that point was that given that we were at that point, and still are, considering a temporary permission, it would not be reasonable to put the applicant to that expense for a temporary period. If yes, you were granted permanent planning permission. That wouldn't be an unreasonable requirement necessarily. One point I would like to make, Chairman, is that the applicant did, as again, in seeking to discharge the conditions following the last grant of permission, submit a management plan which required the access to be marshalled when events were occurring. So someone would be on the gate making sure that it was open or opened when vehicles were arising, and therefore hopefully avoiding queuing traffic on the road. So that's just in response to those points about the access and highway safety, Chairman. Chairman, I do need to come back to Councillor Clark's motion and just seek clarification on the first point. Chairman and Councillor Clark, just to apply the test and reinforce the test that we have to apply here, this is inappropriate development which is harmful by definition. Councillor Thomas mentioned about the temporary nature of it and the fact that we had considered that the screening negated some of the impacts of this development. Just to reiterate, if it's harmful by definition, that is not mitigated by screening, temporary nature, or anything of that nature. Impact on openness potentially can be, but the harm by definition cannot. Councillor Clark has moved refusal on the basis that special circumstances have not been demonstrated. Paragraph 144 of the MPPF says that very special circumstances will not exist unless other considerations outweigh the harm to the greenbelt by reason of definitional harm and any other harm arising. So if we were to phrase a reason for refusal based on Councillor Clark's motion, I just want to be clear that it is effectively the other considerations don't outweigh the harm to the greenbelt, and therefore very special circumstances don't clearly outweigh the harm to the greenbelt, and very special circumstances have not been demonstrated.
Chairman, I actually, as Mr. Pagan was speaking, I can recall all this debate that we had last time, and I remember the phraseology. And yes, I'm quite happy that the correct phraseology, as Mr. Pagan was not putting words into our mouths. He is merely advising us of correct legal phraseology, which I'm grateful to him for. And yes, I agree that that is the intention of the proposal.
Councillor Clark, I think you make a very valid point there. It's quite a lot of words to get correct, isn't it? And I've written some down here, but we can, I think, come to what you said, Mr. Pegram. If you're content with the words, then we will repeat them to be absolutely clear what you're moving, and then we can move to a vote, I guess, on it. Sorry, my apologies.
Because I've got a lot to say. So first of all, highway safety. I mean, so many times we question this. I think we need to question where this advice comes from, but this is advice we have. It's the advice we take every time. So we have no choice but to do that. This is for events, not just weddings. So the economic benefits are not limited to the number of weddings, let alone the number of weddings in Cotgrave. Noise levels. Now I've got some questions, Mr. Pegram. Noise levels. What is the limit likely to be on the noise? I mean, how is the noise going to be limited? We could have, I'm going to say, show my age and say Pink Floyd playing there, or we could have, a few people having a chat in the barn. What's the noise level will be accepted by the council? Marshalling you brought up, because I remembered that as well. Now, we are not. We have to consider this is inappropriate development in the greenbelt, and we must protect the greenbelt. But we can weigh up the harm to the greenbelt against benefits that we may perceive to occur in balancing that. Now, presumably we can balance the type of harm to the greenbelt. There's, it's undoubtedly harm to the greenbelt, but there is harm when we build 1,000 houses on a field. There's harm when we put up teepees for a few days, well, not a few days, a significant number of days in a year, and they can be taken down, they can be gone, and in a year's time this could be flat field again with sheep on it. Can we clarify, are we allowed to grade that harm to the greenbelt? It's not just harm, it's grades of harm. And finally, in terms of the timing of the recurrence of this, or the resubmission of this planning for reapproval, I remember very clearly saying last time we may be in the position now that they can't get enough people through by September this year. That was even before we got through this to this delay. So if we want to give them until next year to be able to do this properly and get this sorted out and not have to come back and back and back, what do we have to say we would like to propose to have to September 22?
Thank you, Councillor Gowan. Quite a lot there, Mr. Pegram.
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, sorry. We've got loads of mics on.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, thank you. If I can just pick up on the test, as Councillor Gowland has explained it, in terms of weighing up harm against the benefits perceived to occur. As Mr. Pegram's outlined in his presentation, paragraph 144, any harm to the green belt, that's harm by reason of inappropriateness by definition, and further harm to the green belt, and that can be the things we've discussed: amenity, the noise, any screening affecting openness to the green belt. All of those harms must be given substantial weight. So it's not in the same way that we would consider a housing application outside of the green belt, where you can weigh one up against the other. You must start with that substantial weight already weighing higher, and only if those benefits that you identify clearly outweigh that weight, that substantial weight, to very special circumstances exist. So in terms of how you can grade weight versus weight, it's very tricky, and that's, as the report says, there's no mathematical method to do it. Yes, I wish there was, but there's no guidance of you give this a score of 5 or something like that. Case law is, it's a matter for the decision maker. It's a single judgment in your head as to, this is how I give this substantial weight and this is what the benefits occur. So unfortunately, it's a matter for the decision maker to decide how they ascribe that balance in those weights.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to support those comments and reiterate it, and I did say in the presentation, if it's harm by definition, that is not tempered by the nature of the development. So you used the example of 1,000 houses or something in a field. These are 3 TPs that would be temporary structures. However, if it's harmful by definition, that isn't affected by the type of development. It is harmful by definition and must be given substantial weight. The MPPG does provide a little bit of guidance on this issue in terms of assessing impact on openness. And it does say that factors you can take into account include the duration of the development and its remediability. So clearly, in this instance, there are structures of a more temporary nature or easily removed, and arguably that impacts on their remediability, in my view. Just in terms of the time of the submission and the options that I went through for members, clearly at the moment, Chairman, and I'm sure Mrs. Sells will come back if I get this wrong, but we have at the moment a motion to refuse and a seconder for refusal of permission. That needs to be taken first, obviously. Depending on the outcome of that, if members were minded to then make a motion to approve, then as I set out in the late representations, you have 3 options in terms of how you might treat condition 1 of the planning permission. And that would effectively then, again, be down to the mover, seconder and the committee as to what they felt was appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. Any other speakers?
I do apologise, Councillor Stockwood. One point I just wanted to make, and it picks up on the point that Mrs. Sells made, the test of balancing harm against, benefits against harm. The legislation or case law tells us is not a mathematical exercise. The speaker earlier did refer to a matrix that she submitted and I displayed on the screen. Even that matrix, Chairman, requires a degree of judgment in applying the weighting to the harms and to the benefits. So as I say, this is very much a matter of judgment, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. I think Councillor Maureen Stockwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I do agree most sincerely that harm must be given substantial weight, particularly to the green belt. I've often spoken on this point and I reiterate it now. However, I can't really, having read and reread this report and listened to what's being said so far this evening, I'm not minded to support the motion to refuse. What I do agree with actually is that this proposal gives rise to a significant rise of other considerations, mostly to me, rural diversification. I think that's most important in today's world, given the setbacks that we've had and biodiversity net gains. I've had great representation given to me, sent to me rather, of the community benefit that it is providing throughout this area and the employment benefit. Those to me are dear to my heart too. And I think we must give those substantial weight also. And to me, they outweigh the harm. If it goes to a recommendation that to support, I do think we should have the longer time frame. I think that the next few months is no way to judge, even on a, you know, we're sort of just testing the waters really. It's just not in the time, and also for it to be elongated just a year to the middle of the times that of operation next June is insufficient. It does need a full year of openings to make all the noise abatement things that we want. So I would be, if it comes to it, recommending that we do make it up until September 22. I've noticed in the conditions that condition 11 I've been most concerned about, and I feel it needs to be added to. The use of, it says Chinese lanterns, but we now call them sky lanterns, and fireworks that make a noise. We need noiseless fireworks on this. They should not be permitted. Laser displays should not be limited, and also helium balloons, given the harm that they give across this area, a hugely farming area. I would like that added when it if it comes to it. So at this moment, that is all I have to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Stockwood. I don't think there are any questions there, were there? Were more statements and comments really. So I don't think there's anything from Mr. Pegram there. The motion. Yes, very good.
Chair, if I might just quickly jump in, Councillor Stockwood, as part of her speaking, said that she considered the community benefits and the employment benefits gave substantial weight and considered that they outweighed the harm. And I'm just going to repeat the test again, that the other benefits have to clearly outweigh the harm. So clearly being the key underlined in bold word for everyone to consider. Thank you.
No, thank you for that clarification. It's helpful. Councillor Healy, I think, was next.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 points, if I may. I endorse the comments made by Councillor Mason and Clark regarding the highway safety. It's an issue I think I stressed as well at our last presentation. Just 1 point on that. I mean, I live in the area. I approached the site entrance from Cotgrave, and of course, you're coming out of a dip in the road, and suddenly as you come to the top of that dip, the entrance is 30 meters ahead of you. So clearly a problem. And I'm just referring to the late representations. There was a small gathering wedding on the 21st of May, and it's noted that that in itself produced significant traffic issues. including difficulties in a stretch limo accessing the site, narrow entrance perhaps, there was noise, there was disturbance. And if that was as a result of a small gathering of 30 people, guests, I just try and imagine what that would magnitude to if it was 200 guests. Thank you, Chair.
You know, some things never change, and it's several years since I was on this committee, but still highway issues come up time and time again, don't they? I'm going to pass it to Mr. Pegram, but I'm pretty sure I know what the comment's going to be.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to reiterate, the highways don't object to this application. The applicant has demonstrated that they can achieve the required visibility display for a road of this speed. In terms of the recent event that took place, Chairman, yes, we did have a complaint about an event on this site on the 21st of May. There was suggestions that it caused traffic chaos. The objectors did send us photographs of vehicles on the road. And there was a stretched limo, it was a Hummer that tried to access the site. There wasn't a great deal number of pictures. I haven't got them to show you. I'd leave you to make your own views on them. But the applicant equally did send me a CCTV footage of the Hummer accessing the site. From my reading of that, or viewing the footage, yes, the gate was shut when it arrived. And it had to wait on the road until the gate was opened. When the gate was opened, it entered the site. From what I could see, it didn't, and there was no undue problems with it entering the site. Yes, it was sort of moving cautiously, but then I think I would if I was driving a vehicle of that size. The other point to make is that this event took place outside of any permission granted on the site and outside of any management plan. Later in the evening, there was a security person on the gate, opening the gate for people leaving the site. And again, that's evidenced by the CCTV footage that was sent to us. So, Chairman, I think it's only fair that balanced picture is presented to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, sorry, point of clarification. Could Mr. Pegram just confirm, how was the Highway Authority reconsulted for tonight's meeting as a result of that event?
Mr. Pegram, I don't know.
No, Chairman, the application, as I said in the beginning, is the application you considered in October. It was subject to consultations. There was no reason necessarily to consult the Highway Authority on that recent event. Certainly nothing has come to my attention that would suggest that there was a severe issue on the highway on that night.
There doesn't seem to be any indication for anybody else wishing to speak at this point in time. So I think if we could clarify the words for Councillor Clark's motion, so we're absolutely clear what he is agreeing to, because it's rather technical, and then we'll move to a vote on Councillor Clark's proposal.
Thank you, Chairman. I can do. Effectively, Chairman, the development is inappropriate development in the green belt, which causes harm by definition and by other harms in terms of impact on openness and other harms arising. And the person who made the motion and seconded by Councillor Thomas are not satisfied that other considerations outweigh, clearly outweigh the harm to the green belt, and therefore very special circumstances have not been demonstrated. The second reason relates to noise and disturbance to amenities of neighbouring properties as a result of the activities on site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that clarification. I think then we'll take a vote on Councillor Clark's motion.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Sells, you take the vote.
So the wording's already been provided. So all those in favour of the motion to refuse planning permission? And all those in favour, please. Against, sorry, against. 4, Councillor Mason has stood down as ward councillor, so I make that 6 in favour of the recommendation and 4 against, so the motion carries.
Right. 6 for and 4 against, so the motion is carried. Councillor Clark's motion. Right. I'm going to say that's a rather, yes. I think that concludes the business, doesn't it, on this item? That is it. Thank you for that vote. As I say, 6 for, 4 against, carried. Thank you. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you for your presentations this evening. Right, that takes us to the, well, it's 10 to 8. We're okay without a comfort break, I suspect. So perhaps we can do the next item and then think of a comfort break. The next item is application 21-00804/full, 38 Mulberry Close, West Bridgeford. Proposed 2-storey and first floor front extension, first floor window to side elevation and internal alterations. So, Mr. Pegram, if you'd like to present.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you say, this is an application for extensions to a property. The property in question is 38 Mulberry Close, West Bridgeford. This application is before committee because one of the ward councillors lives next door, has declared an interest, and therefore in accordance with the constitution and our procedures is before the committee for consideration. As you can see, the application is located, or application site is located on Compton Acres at the end of a cul-de-sac. It's surrounded by properties of not dissimilar appearance. If we move to the photographs, so this is the application property in question. You'll see that it's very similar to the one to the right, and then that shows you the relationship with that property. So this property does step slightly further forward. That's the gap between the two properties. Again, showing you that relationship. So it steps forward of this part of the elevation, reasonably level with the front of the garage on the application site. And then looking across to pick up the relationship with the other neighbouring property. And again, that relationship slightly different in terms of character and fenestration details. So this is the property as you saw it in the plans, in the photographs, pre-extensions, and the proposal is for a first floor extension in this location over the garage. That brings the gable forward by 2.175 metres. The other element is a 2-storey extension on the other side of the property, which projects 3.315 metres forward of the building at that point. And there is effectively a 2-storey atrium created between the two extensions. So a ground floor provides the applicant with an enlarged living area. At first floor, an enlarged bedroom here, and another bedroom in that location. Chairman, the concerns of the neighbouring property number 36 are set out in the report at page 53 going over to 54. Application has been considered very carefully. I would point out that the property faces south. In terms of impact, the greatest impact probably is on the front garden, which is not the prime amenity area in my view. And your officers do not believe that the extension would be so harmful to the amenities of the neighbouring property so as to warrant refusal of permission. The other concern, or one of the other concerns raised by the neighbour, was that the proposal involves the provision of an additional window in that side elevation, which you can see there. A new window in the side elevation at first floor would require planning permission in normal circumstances, unless it's obscure glazed or the opening part of the window is 1.7 metres above the floor of the room that it serves. And you will see that we have conditioned that window should be obscure glazed. However, Chairman, just to flick back, you'll see that it looks out onto a blank gable end. So again, it's not considered that results in unacceptable overlooking. Chairman, the scheme is considered to be acceptable and is therefore before you with a recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. We have no speakers, as I said earlier, for this item, so we can go straight into our discussion, I believe. Who would like to start the debate? It's between Councillor Healy and Councillor John Stockwood. So Councillor Healy first, then John Stockwood, I think.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very inoffensive extension, really. I mean, there's just 3 or 4 queries of concern, which are listed on page 54. And all of those seem to have been addressed in consultation. There was a query on the bay window, which would have produced some overlooking to number 36, I believe. But having read my notes, I gather that discussion with number 36, and between them they reached an agreement that number 38 would be happy to remove that bay window and eliminate what I think was probably the only objection on the proposal. The bathroom window we've talked about has been dealt with. That will be glazed. I see no problem with this at all, unless somebody else wishes to comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's a really statements, no questions there, I believe. So it's over to Councillor John Stockwood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Having read the report, I think that the conditions address the issues raised, particularly the obscure glazing of the side window. And as such, I'm happy to move the recommendation as written in the report that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions as listed. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor McGowan. Okay. Noted. Councillor Thomas.
I'd like to second, please.
Thank you. So we have any other speakers? My apologies. No. Right. We have a proposal from Councillor John Stockwood to propose the recommendation, and Councillor Thomas is seconding it. I think we can move to the vote there. If Mrs. Sells wants to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. All those in favour, please. Thank you. That's 10 for, none against, as Councillor Gowland has stepped down. So the motion carries.
Thank you. Does anybody wish a comfort break? Or yes, I'm getting a nod over there. Likewise. Shall we take 15 minutes comfort break? Just to, it's getting rather warm. 5, okay. 5 to 10. It's getting rather warm in here. I don't know about anybody else. I'm finding it. Well, I'll take my jacket up. Thank you. Back at just before 8:05. Thanks. We have to be socially distanced, don't we? Even taking a comfort break. think if we could begin to take our seats, it's coming up to the time to start again. I think we're all back, are we not? Nobody's missing that I can see. Are we okay on the recording side of the business? Yes. Right, if we could restart the proceedings. The next application is 21/01029. I've got an echo, I don't know why, /CTY. This is Nottinghamshire County Council, where we are the consultee, and it's for land north of Rempston Road, Eastleigh, Nottinghamshire. I'll paraphrase it. It's all about the proposed erection of a primary school, and I'm sure the planning officer will give us more detail on that. So without more ado, there are no speakers. If I could ask Mr. Hilton to take us through his presentation, that would be appropriate. Sorry, I got the wrong way, Mr. Taylor. My apologies.
That's okay, Chairman. Thank you. Let me just share the presentation. Thank you. Right, yeah, members are advised that there are no late reps for this application. However, officers have noticed that there is an omission in the numbering of conditions at the end of the report, whereby condition 13 is missing. This is human error. Apologies. There never was a condition 13. It's not superstition. It's just an error on my part. So I apologise for that. If we get to a point where officers are, or members are satisfied with the recommendation, then clearly the numbering will need to be corrected accordingly. Application site is located in Eastleigh, and as Councillor Upton has quite rightly said, it is a county application, which is a fairly rare type of application that we receive at a planning committee. It's an application for a new primary school in Eastleigh, and the Borough Council in this instance are the consultee, and the County Council are the determining authority. The submission is in outline form, with only the access and scale of the development to be assessed at this time. Proposals for up to a 2-form entry to be constructed in phases, plus a 26-place nursery with associated car parking. The application also proposes areas of soft play, hard play, grass fields, grass playing fields, security fencing, sprinkler tanks, and the provision of a 3-metre wide shared pedestrian and cycle path linking Sheepwash Way, which is to the west. Unfortunately, these plans are not as up to date as I would like them to be, because there is housing development that's been constructed in this location here, and then another housing development being constructed by a different developer has currently commenced in respect of the area to the immediate south of the red line. Members will note that the red line includes the highway connection back to the adopted highway, which is why you've got this slightly odd form at the south end of the plan, and the footpath link. Right, apologies. So this is the road network connecting back to Rempston Road. This is the aforementioned pedestrian link that would connect through to the Persimmon housing development that is nearing completion in this location here. And then there is another development being undertaken by David Wilson Homes in this location here. So this is the access road that would serve as the access point to the school site that is before members for consideration this evening. The development is located alongside the two aforementioned developments, with the Sheepwash Brook forming the northern boundary of the site, an open countryside to the immediate east. Site currently comprises 2 arable fields separated by a belt of woodland, which if I click to the next slide will perhaps be clearer. Shown in this location here, and will serve as a useful feature when I guide you through the photographs to help orientate members to understand the configuration of the site. What I propose to do is bring members in from a location at the bottom here along the brook, up through a footpath that runs Currently, it's got a diversion order in place to take it around the perimeter of the site, but its usual location is slap bang through the middle of this application, running along the boundary of around the perimeter of the site to approximately this location, looking back across the site. And there's also views across looking towards the housing development that exists in this location. Indicative plans have been submitted showing where the school could be located, and the design and access statement advises that the school would initially be a single form entry with the ability to expand to a 2-form entry over 2 stories. Members are advised that the exact location, the architectural shape of the building and its detailed layout would be subject to a separate detailed application, and therefore is not for consideration at this time as it is an outline application. Vehicular access, as mentioned, would be across the new road to serve the David Wilson development to the south and will connect onto Remston Road. Pavements along those new roads will also serve to provide pedestrian access, as would footpath 5, which I've just indicated to members, which runs through the site. And as mentioned, there is a proposal as part of the application to provide a pedestrian cycle link across to the neighbouring residential developments where the spur sticks out on the western location of that plan. As part of the development, it's proposed to regrade the land levels of the school site, resulting in the levels of the school and the car park being raised, although the location of the school and the car park are not matters for consideration, but as indicated on the plans, as the site slopes down from south to north towards the Sheepwash Brook. The site section detailing those proposed alterations has been included, which indicatively shows how an embankment between the building and the existing woodland and the pitches potentially at a lower level could be accommodated, and officers are advised that the details of level should be conditioned to any granted permission on this application. If I take members on a guide around the site as I've indicated, so starting with the brook to your left hand side in this photograph and the edge of the Simon development on the right hand side, members will note that this is the copse of woodland I referred to. So when we get to the indicative plans, they show a school building to the right-hand side of the copse of trees and playing fields to the left-hand side in this particular image. Moving along the edge of the brook again, you've got that copse of trees, that belt of woodland trees in closer proximity, and you can start to see the footpath that runs diagonally through the middle of this photograph, which connects up to the David Wilson residential developments. And again, moving along that footpath, the woodland belt is now central at the edge of the footpath. You see it on the left-hand side. Moving along, looking slightly further to the right, you see the edge of the Persimmon housing development. And then moving to the top of that hill, you look across, and this is the location where the proposed cycle footway link across to that housing development is proposed as part of this application. Moving through the gateway and turning immediately left, you now have the woodland belt on your immediate left-hand side, and you'll notice that development is clearly taking place in respect of partially levelling of the site that is the application site before members for consideration or comment for consultation on this evening. This is the area of site that the school building is indicated could be located on. And again, moving around further to the left-hand side of this image, you get to the edge of the application site, looking back across to the belt of woodland trees in this location here. Slightly older photograph that I took earlier this year in relation to another development, but perhaps helpful for members, shows the woodland belt in this location down here. This is taken from the site office at the David Wilson development, so it is an elevated position. It's not a position that would necessarily exist to the public in any time in the future, unless you are happening to occupy a dwelling that was located on this exact plot, and no other dwellings are built between you and the development itself. But nevertheless, it gives an indication that you've got the Persimmon development on the left-hand side of the image, Eastleek village beyond it in that location, the woodland belt there, and an indication as to where the school could be located with the playing fields beyond it. But again, we have a site layout plan showing the vehicle connections onto Remston Road and the pedestrian connection through to Sheepwash Way, and the red line location plan for the site. Again, a bit more detail and beginning to show you some of the topography, showing that the land slopes down as you move towards the brook, which is at the top of that plan. An indicative plan to show how the buildings could be positioned and located in relation to the constraints of the site. So as you'll see in this particular instance, it's a linear form located broadly parallel to the road to the south of the building, with a switchback of pathways passing through that woodland belt down towards playing fields at the northern edge of that image. Again, this is the indicative section that's been shown. This is the existing gradient of the slope at the time the application came in. That may well have changed as a result of the building activity you saw in the photographs a moment ago. And this is an indication of how the levels could be graded to create a broadly flat plateau for a building to be located. The woodland belt remaining, and an area of playing field could be located down towards the brook, which would be at the edge of the development sites down here. And again, hopefully as a helpful plan, this shows the David Wilson development. So again, the access off Renston Road, the photo from the site cabins I took was broadly in this location, looking across the development. This is the footpath line that would run through the development once construction is completed. It would revert back to its original location. Footpath link going through to the neighbouring housing development in that location. School building potentially located here, with the playing fields just off the top of that plan. The application description also makes reference to things such as 2-metre high security fences around the perimeter, along with sprinkler tanks. Although again, members are advised that the details of layout and appearance are reserved at this time. The submission includes the section which shows that the building would be 2 stories in height and provides details of floor area, which states it would be approximately 12 metres high. Whilst details of layout and appearance of the building are reserved for later consideration, the scale of development, i.e. the floor area and the maximum height of 12 metres above the raised ground levels, are matters for consideration. Members are advised that none of the ward members or the parish council or the technical consultees have objected to the proposal. However, the scheme is before members tonight due to the Borough Council scheme of delegation requiring members' consideration of submissions of this nature. The site currently benefits from outline planning permission for a primary school by virtue of a 2006 outline application for the David Wilson development that's shown on the screen before you, and therefore officers are satisfied with the principle of a new school on this site. As set out within the agenda papers, officers are also satisfied that a school building could be designed and located to have an acceptable relationship to the neighbouring residential properties, and that this relationship would be assessed as part of a subsequent reserved matters application or applications. Matters of highway safety, flood risk, ecology and archaeology are also set out in the papers. Members are advised that issues of on-site parking, pick-up and drop-off facilities are matters for primarily comment by the Highway Authority in their assessment of the proposal, and that there are no such details for consideration as part of the current proposal. Furthermore, as the determining authority, these are ultimately matters for the county to consider. Nevertheless, members can, through the current process, make the county aware of any such concerns if they wish to do so. Therefore, officers are recommending that the members recommend that the county council be informed that the borough council does not object, subject to conditions and informative notes set out in the agenda papers and any other conditions the county council deems appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Right, we have no speakers, so we can start the debate. I see a hand up from Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was going to make a speech and I thought I had to go over there, but I don't. So I will read you my speech from here instead. That's all right. The new school is so very important to Eastleigh, and I hope it will be progressed speedily in time to open in September 2022. I fully support the application and urge you to follow the officer recommendation to respond to the County Council that Rushcliffe does not object subject to conditions. There are, however, concerns about the access. Whilst it's of course important to encourage children to walk to school and staff to use public transport, this is not always possible, and if cars are not catered for properly, the result can be congestion and road safety issues. There will be difficulties and loss of amenity for residents in the new estate and the adjacent one because of cars waiting, turning and parking in residential streets. So in addition to the conditions requested, I ask that the response to the county has an additional advisory note asking them to consider further the following points raised by ward members and the parish council. And there are 5 of them. Number 1, a drop-off area is provided outside the school. also used for buses to park for swimming and so on, rather than these parking on the road as per the report. Second one, more staff car parking spaces to be provided by extending the car park to the eastern boundary. Third, a gathering area outside the pedestrian area so that parents collecting children do not block the foot and cycle path. 4, yellow zigzags on the road serving plots 266 to 273. If you look on the diagram that's on the screen at the moment, it's that block of houses to just the right of your cursor there. If you just, yes, take it across there. There's a road that goes across there with car parking spaces on one side and houses on the other. The main spine road has got yellow zigzag lines, but that road is going to be targeted by people, you know, going down there and looking for someone to stop, basically. And so I would suggest that that one needs zigzag lines as well as the others that are already indicated. And the 5th point is access to the playing fields for emergency vehicles. You can't see it very well from that picture, but I don't know if you can put one of the others up that shows that the playing fields. Have you got the one that's got the zigzag path on, please? Yes, that one. Should there be any accidents on the playing fields, emergency vehicles need to be able to get down there, which could be provided along the footpath. That zigzag path is not a road, you know, it's not suitable for vehicles to access the playing fields. There is provision of a gate just where that footpath comes in on the left for maintenance vehicles. I think that needs to be capable of access by emergency vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Mason.
Thank you. Yes, I listened to everything that Councillor Thomas says, and I think a lot of it, actually, most of it made sense. And I would like to put forward and support the recommendation that we agree. I've just lost the wording for a minute. Where is that? What page? I've just been looking. Oh yeah, page 71. That be informed that the Borough Council does not object to the proposal subject to the following conditions. And perhaps we can hear from Mr. Pegram whether he thinks what Councillor Thomas has said is useful. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gowan would like to speak.
I'd like to second that. I'd also like to agree with Councillor Thomas about the traffic. I assume that road is not one way, and I also assume it's, you know, effectively a small housing estate road. So, being the person who has in their ward Abbey Park and Evelyn Campion schools, this is Abbey Road and Evelyn Campion schools, I know it's going to cause a lot of stress for people there. So as much parking and pull-off space for the parents as possible would be good. Actually, maybe they could drop the children on the Rempston Road, but I'm sure that's not going to happen. So they need more drop-off space near the school.
Right, so we have a proposer and a seconder, but I'm minded we have quite a few points made by Councillor Thomas, the ward member, for the conditions. So I think we ought to just clarify with the planning officer the conditions that you raised, Councillor Thomas, if we want to add them onto the conditions that's in the report.
There weren't conditions, Chair. I was suggesting advisory notes that the County Council can reconsider these details. But I can run through them again if that would be helpful.
No need, Councillor Thomas. I've furiously been scribbling away, and I've got sight of yours and the parish council's original comments. You're quite right. Just to clarify, Chairman, it is a material consideration. It is for the planning committee to feed back to the determining authority any matters they wish them to consider. And Councillor Thomas has indicated that she would want this to be a note to applicants. I see no issues with the 5 points being appended to the recommendation within the report.
Thank you. If you've got those 5 points, that's excellent. So I think we can move to the vote. We've got a proposal to support the recommendation from Councillor Mason. We have it seconded by Councillor Gowan. Shall we take the vote, please, Mrs. Self?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check with Councillor Mason that you're happy for those additions to the informative? And Councillor Thomas, yes, and Councillor Gowland did mention that already. So the motion is as per the recommendation within the report. All those in favour? That's 11 for, none against, so the motion carries.
Thank you. So the final application of the evening, which is number 21/01046/CTY. Sort of similar application from the Nottinghamshire County Council for a new primary school, land off Widnall Drive, Bingham. Again, we have no speakers to this application, so we can go straight into the presentation from Mr. Taylor, if he's ready for that. Fine, forward we go.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, members are advised that there has been a late representation received for this application, and officers also note that the noise assessment condition referred to in the report is not actually listed in the suggested conditions. So if members were minded to consider that as part of their deliberations, that would be helpful. Again, it is a not dissimilar application in the sense that it is a county application. You get very few of these at any one time, and then you get 2 in the same time period and 2 on the same planning committee. Such is life. As with the previous application, it is a county application for a new primary school, this time in Bingham. And again, just to reiterate, the Borough Council are the consultee and the County Council is the determining authority. The main difference with this one is that it is a submission of a full application, therefore all matters to be considered at this time. Proposal is for a 315 place or 1.5 form entry primary school, plus a 26 place nursery to be built over 2 phases. The first phase being a single form entry, 210 place primary school and the 26 place nursery. Again, aerial photography has not helped me with indicating quite how up to date we are with development that's taking place at the north of Bingham, Chairman. But again, helpfully from my perspective, there is a belt of woodland trees along the boundary of the site, which again serves as a useful indicator as to where any proposed development is taking place. The application also includes associated playing fields, lighting, sprinkler tank, hard surface play areas, landscaping, sun canopies, turf sports pitches, security fencing, and a path connecting Widnall Drive to Dunsmore Avenue, which I'll indicate on plans in a moment, Chairman. The site is located within the heart of the sustainable urban extension currently under construction to the north of Bingham. So bearing in mind that belt of woodland trees is this belt of woodland trees. So we're currently stood on Chapel Lane looking north with Bingham and the railway line. Behind you, Morbridge Road Industrial Estate, for those that know it, is over your right shoulder of the photographer. You clearly see there is development taking place on phase 1, which is at the northern end of the wider sustainable urban extension. And this application relates to the primary school within that development. Again, moving slightly further along Chapel Lane towards the recently constructed roundabout that forms the main access to the spine road that runs through the site. Again, you'll notice the belt of woodland trees broadly framed by the traffic lights in this image. And again, crossing over the road, you'll notice the location of those belt of trees, and helpfully, roughly the indication of the location of the school is within that chain link fence that you can see sort of in the midground of that image. That's because development is taking place on a number of sites around the school application site. Being a live application site, a live construction site, it made it slightly awkward for me to be able to get to all sites of the development, but hopefully, given that this is the public face of it, members will get a good flavour of what is before them for comment this evening. Moving up to the roundabout, you can make out that belt of trees on the right-hand side of the image, which means the school site is on the left-hand side of the road that enters in. The main spine road is Dunsmore Avenue, and it connects through to the old fosse where the old A46 as was. Again, development sites on the left-hand side, belt of trees on the right-hand edge. And similarly, again, you can see the residential development taking place in the background of this image. School site is on your left. The location for the school link runs in the foreground of the woodland belt and will connect through to a road that has not been fully constructed, which is known as Widnall Drive, which would serve as the vehicular access to the school site. This is looking along the rough location of that access pedestrian link. So that would be the primary pedestrian link would be down the track that runs in front of you with the school building on the left-hand side that will connect two major roads through the housing development, with the principal vehicular access being off the road that has not yet been constructed. Therefore, it's difficult to pinpoint in this photograph for you, Chairman. Again, the other side of that woodland belt just shows the development taking place. The road would broadly come around the back edge here, down the other side of the belt of trees, and serve as the vehicular access beyond that belt of trees in that location. And again, this is just stepping further back. The school would be located behind that belt of trees. To help members, the road access again is shown on the left-hand side of the image. The principal application site where the building and the sports pitches would be located is the red line on the right-hand side of that image. And again, you can see the indicated position of the school building. This is where I walked you in and then showed you the photograph looking down this footpath link in this location. This is the area that I was having difficulty gaining access to show you where the vehicular access would be. You can see that the building would be linear in its form, again proposed as two phases. So the single form entry is proposed to be initially constructed, the extra half form entry as phase 2 at a latter stage as and when required. The building is single story in nature, and you can see located broadly to the northern edge of the site with the sports pitches and play areas predominantly to the south, although there is play areas alongside the the pedestrian access, where you can see it says pedestrian access, which is the link get the cursor on the screen in this location here. So this would be the principal pedestrian access, so walking either from Dunsmore or Widnall Drive, with vehicular access for presumably school workers in relation to arriving and departing work in this location. Housing development is approved in this location. This is an accurate plan, Chairman. So it does show the relationship of the approved residential development surrounding the site. The white land in this location is a secure outline planning permission at this stage for a retail unit in this rough location here and a community use in this location here. But we've not currently had any reserved matters applications for those particular developments. Moving back to the plans, you can see that the building is predominantly single story. The larger raised area is indicated to be the hall, presumably to be used for assemblies and indoor sporting facilities, and therefore has a slightly raised roof level, although you'll notice that it is in mono-pitch form. And again, an indication of the palette of materials and the scale of development that is for members' consultation this evening. And again, just an indication of the long elevation to show what it would look like with phase 2 attached. Indication of the internal layout. So again, we've got the hall building at this location. This is Widnall Drive, broadly in this location. Principal primary access here. You would have school classrooms located off a central corridor with office and admin space in this particular location. And the nursery, I believe, is at this end of the building from recollection. Forgive me, the colours aren't particularly clear on the plan up there. And again, an indication of phase 2 for the extra half form entry. Indication of, again, just the layout in relationship to the sporting outdoor facilities and phase 2, and some sections through the site to show the relative levels to the neighbouring development and the belt of woodland trees. As with the previous application, Chairman, officers are satisfied with the principle of a new school on this site. It does already benefit from outline planning permission, and as set out in the agenda papers, officers are also satisfied that the school has been suitably designed and located to have an acceptable relationship to the neighbouring residential properties and its wider area subject to conditions. Matters of highway safety, flood risk, drainage, contamination, ecology and archaeology are also set out in the papers, and members are advised that as this is a full application, issues such as on-site parking, pick-up and drop-off facilities are again material considerations, but again those issues would be primarily assessed by the highway authority in their specialism, and ultimately would be for the county council to consider them as the determining authority. Nevertheless, yet again, members can comment on such matters if they wish to do so. Therefore, officers are recommending that members recommend that the county council be informed that the borough council does not object to the proposal, subject to conditions and the informative notes in the agenda paper and on the late representations, and a condition requiring a noise impact assessment and any other conditions that the County Council deems appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. So, members of the committee, we're now ready to discuss the application and make a decision on the recommendation. Who would like to start the debate? Councillor John?
Yeah, Stockwood.
Stockwood. My apologies.
Oh, okay. I think as with Eastleek, the Bingham community welcomes the provision of the primary school. It's part of the development that was planned all those years ago. And I think if you look at the road layout, still has, if you look at the top right-hand side, that widening of the road where the buses are going to pull in. And so I think we've already got a drop-off area. So, you know, Bingham deserves better. We've got a drop-off area already. With regards to all of the conditions that have been identified, extra matters identified by the officers in the report, I fully support that. The issue of the additional noise report that was highlighted, and the comments made in the late representations, both conditions and the informative notes regarding ecological and environmental matters. I'm happy to move all of that on block. As I say, welcome the development and move the recommendation on page 86 with all those amendments as listed. Happy to listen to any other members of the committee who want to add any other informatives to that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mason.
Yes, I would like to second the recommendation, please. Yes, it is good to see two schools on one report, so I'm all for it. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Maureen Stockwood.
Thank you. I have slight concerns. I can see that pull-in, but it's still, the roads surrounding that area are going to be where people park waiting for their offspring to get out of school in the afternoon, and in the morning they'll be dropping them off at all sorts of places around there, because it's going to be quite a busy area. This is the 5th school that Bingham will have to cater for the increased population, but this will be one that adds to the congestion that occurs outside each of the schools. And I can't agree with previous speaker that just having a bus pull in there will alleviate the problem. Also, I noted that the number of teachers that's envisaged is not enough parking spaces for them, and actually on site. So I think that is a concern, a substantial concern of mine. So yeah, I know we are only consultees, and that the county is going to address this fairly soon. So I should think most of the things are cut and dried by now, but I do feel I should, I question that layout of having a tennis court that way when you could have had a bit more parking for, the staff, as well as the staff that, they'll be staying for lunch and things, the other staff that come at various times of the day. And of course, schools hold events, and people are invited, and the catchment area will not just be round there. The other schools of that age group are full in Bingham, so most of the youngsters coming up will be applying for that one when it's built. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stockwood. Councillor Gowan.
Councillor Gowland, sorry, can you just turn your microphone on? Thank you.
That school is right next to the balancing pond. It's nothing to do with this application, I guess, and it's probably, I'll probably be told it's out of order, but I'd like to think there's a proper fence around that balancing pond.
Thank you. Point taken. Councillor Perry-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm pleased that we're given the opportunity to comment on new schools. And to a degree, you sort of get the impression generally that you know, the community is so in favour of these services that perhaps we don't scrutinise them enough. And the last time that Rushcliffe Borough Council were involved in a consultation was, I think, with the Ed Walton School. Now, I'm not blaming Rushcliffe at all for what happened next, because it is the county's fault. We should have checked. I think the land that they were given for the school to be built on was not an optimum piece of land. And I think it cost quite a few £1 million to get the levels right, or something like that. And it's at this juncture that you know, we must all try and assist those who we think are experts, but sometimes forget some of the issues that, you know, we might consequentially face. And I completely agree with my colleague, Councillor Mrs. Stockwood. Traffic is always an issue. It's an issue across the county. We're well aware of it. There is absolutely no excuse in Eastleek or in Bingham to get this wrong. And our experts at the Highways Authority, I'm sure, will get it right this time. But one of my colleagues did mention, just in case they've forgotten, I think I'll just throw it in. You may have heard that the County Council is now an enthusiastic promoter of the environment and green issues. And I would like, because I've not seen it in any of the text, but maybe I've missed it, but I would like this this building to be covered in solar panels, because that's the future, I suspect. And I can't think of anything else to add to that. So they're my two comments: traffic and solar panels. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. I think there is an advisory note about solar panels. There certainly was on the Eastleek one. Is that? Anyway, can I propose that we add an advisory note similar to the one I proposed for Eastleek, to cover Councillor Mrs. Stockwood's comments, asking the County Council to reconsider parking provision and drop-off in light of comments by Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I think I'll pass over to the planning officer, because there's two items there we're proposing up with: the parking and drop-off and the query about solar panels, if not anything else.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify, the fundamental difference between this and the application we've determined not too long ago is that this is a full planning application. We have all the details before us, and may I remind the committee, you are a consultee, so you are bound to assess what is before us. As you will have heard said numerous times before, we have to assess what is before us. Yes, we can put an advisory note on, but the determining authority will assess it on the basis of what is before them. We don't have the benefit of knowing what the Highway Authority say, because we are a consultee and we don't have access to that information. I don't doubt that people will drive to drop off them and pick up their offspring from this site. I don't refute that in any way, shape or form. As a consultee, as I say, you are to assess all planning matters, but as the determining authority, ultimately County Council are tasked with assessing that. If you are of the mindset that the development before you is not acceptable, you have a number of options open to you. Well, in assessing the application, you have a number of options open to you. You can either advise the county council that you do not object to the proposal. That would be your first option. The second option would be that you do not object, subject to conditions. Your third option would be to advise that you do object and state the grounds on which you object. All of those options are open to members this evening. I remind you, you are not determining the application. You don't necessarily have to come up with defendable wording per se, but it does have to have planning grounds and planning merit.
Thank you. I think we are of a mind to put advisory notes though on the solar panels, parking and drop off if we could. Councillor Thomas.
Oh, if there is an advisory note already in under the informatives, the first one. It says a consideration be given to the environmental credentials of the building through the use of solar panels, grey water harvesting, electrical vehicle charging points, etc. That is under the informatives already.
Bottom of page 90, if that helps, Chairman. First item under the headline informatives.
Right. Yes. Thank you for drawing my attention to that. Yeah. Okay with that, Councillor Pettigrew? Yeah. No, it's fair. Right. Anybody else wish to speak? If not, we have a proposal to accept the recommendation from Councillor John Stockwood, I believe, seconded by Councillor Mason. Shall we go to the vote? To the vote then, Mrs. Sells.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check the mover and the seconder were happy with that additional advisory note regarding parking and drop off? Yeah.
Yeah, they're both indicating they're happy with the advisory notes, yes.
Thank you. Everyone all in favour of the recommendation as per the report? That's 11, Chair. 4, so the motion carries.
Thank you. I don't see any other items on tonight's agenda, so I think I would like to thank everybody for being here this evening, officers and members alike, and support staff, and formally close the meeting, which by my watch is 8:45 or thereabouts. So thank you very much.